The crash of Dr. Eris Thorne. The hum of the modified Rotax engine was a fragile counterpoint to the raw symphony of the Alaskan wilderness. Dr. Eris Thorne, a man whose spirit was as untamed as the landscape below, gripped the controls of his experimental bush plane, the Icarus. He wasn't a pilot by trade, but necessity, and a healthy dose of stubbornness, had taught him enough to be dangerous. His knuckles were white against the worn leather of the yoke, his eyes scanning the endless tapestry of spruce trees and snow-dusted peaks. Eris wasn't just sightseeing. He was hunting. For years, whispers had circulated among fringe scientific communities about an anomaly hidden deep within the Alaskan interior, a region known for its magnetic disturbances and unexplained phenomena. Officially, it was dismissed as geological quirks or local folklore. But Eris, a xenobiologist with a healthy disregard for official narratives, believed otherwise. He'd poured his life savings, and a dubious grant from a less-than-reputable research foundation, into this expedition. His instruments flickered erratically. The magnetic compass spun wildly, the altimeter jumped, and the engine sputtered with increasing frequency. Eris cursed under his breath. He'd shielded the Icarus as best he could against electromagnetic interference, but whatever was down there was powerful enough to punch through his defenses. Almost there, he muttered to himself, his voice a rough rasp against the drone of the engine. According to his calculations, the anomaly lay within a secluded valley, cradled by the jagged peaks of the Brooks Range. He just needed to keep the damn plane in the air long enough to reach it. Suddenly, a wave of energy slammed into the Icarus. The engine coughed violently and died, the propeller grinding to a halt with a sickening thud. The plane lurched downwards, throwing Eris against his harness. Red warning lights blazed on the control panel, their harsh glow reflecting in his wide, panicked eyes. Mayday! Mayday! This is Icarus requesting immediate assistance. Engine failure. Complete systems malfunction. Position approximately. He rattled off the coordinates he'd painstakingly calculated, but the radio crackled with static. He was alone. The ground rushed up to meet him with terrifying speed. Eris fought desperately to regain control, but the Icarus was now a glorified glider, plummeting towards the unforgiving wilderness below. He scanned the landscape for a possible landing site, his mind racing. A frozen lake? A snow-covered meadow? Anything was better than crashing headfirst into the trees. Luck, or perhaps fate, offered a slim chance. A narrow clearing, barely large enough to accommodate the plane, appeared through the dense foliage. It was a long shot, but it was his only shot. Eris wrestled with the controls, adjusting the Icarus's trajectory with agonizing slowness. The impact was brutal. The plane slammed into the ground with bone-jarring force, the landing gear collapsing under the strain. Trees loomed on either side, their branches tearing at the wings. Metal screamed, glass shattered, and the world turned upside down. Eris blacked out. He awoke to the smell of gasoline and burning rubber. The cockpit was a twisted mess of metal and shattered glass. His head throbbed, his body ached, and his ears rang with the echoes of the crash. But he was alive. That was all that mattered. He fumbled for the release on his harness, his fingers clumsy and unresponsive. Once free, he stumbled out of the wreckage, his legs shaky beneath him. The Icarus was a write-off, a mangled testament to his recklessness. But he had reached the valley. He surveyed his surroundings, his scientific curiosity overriding his immediate discomfort. The clearing was small and strangely symmetrical, as if deliberately carved out of the surrounding forest. The trees were unnaturally tall and straight, their branches forming a dense canopy overhead. The air was thick with the scent of pine and something else, something alien. Eris pulled out his survival pack from the remains of the cockpit, checking its contents. Emergency beacon, first aid kit, rations, a trusty hunting knife, the essentials. He activated the beacon, but he knew it was a long shot. Rescue in this remote location could take days, even weeks. He was on his own. He ventured into the surrounding forest, his senses on high alert. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant caw of a raven. He noticed something odd about the vegetation. The moss grew in intricate patterns, the ferns unfurled in perfect spirals, and the trees seemed to align themselves along precise geometric lines. It was as if the entire forest had been meticulously designed. He consulted his map, trying to orient himself. According to his calculations, the source of the anomaly was located at the far end of the valley, near a towering rock formation. It was a long trek, but he had to investigate. This could be the discovery of a lifetime. As he pushed deeper into the forest, he noticed a faint shimmer in the air, a subtle distortion of light that seemed to ripple across the landscape. He reached out to touch it, but his hand passed through empty space. It was there, and yet it wasn't. The feeling of being watched intensified. He could sense eyes on him, observing his every move. He stopped and scanned the surrounding trees, his hand gripping his hunting knife. "Hello?" he called out, his voice trembling slightly. "Is anyone there?" Only silence answered him. He continued on, his pace quickening. The rock formation loomed ahead, a monolithic structure that seemed to defy gravity. As he drew closer, he noticed something even more extraordinary. Embedded in the rock face was a doorway, an archway of polished metal that shimmered with an otherworldly glow. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The metal was smooth and seamless, devoid of any rivets or welds. Strange symbols were etched into its surface, a language he didn't recognize. The archway pulsed with a soft, blue light, casting an eerie glow on the surrounding landscape. Eris approached the doorway cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached out and touched the metal, expecting it to be cold and inert. Instead, it was warm, almost alive. A jolt of energy surged through his body, making him gasp. The doorway hummed, and the symbols on its surface began to glow brighter. With a slow, grinding sound, the archway opened, revealing a dark and mysterious passage. Eris hesitated. He knew he should turn back, that this was beyond his understanding. But the lure of the unknown was too strong to resist. He took a deep breath and stepped through the doorway, into the darkness beyond. The passage sloped downwards, leading him deeper into the earth. The air grew colder and heavier, and the scent of pine was replaced by a metallic tang. He activated his flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. The passage opened into a vast chamber, its walls lined with intricate carvings and glowing panels. Strange machines hummed and whirred, their purpose unknown. Bioluminescent plants illuminated the space with an ethereal glow, casting long, dancing shadows. Eris stood in awe, his mind struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. This was no natural cave system. This was a structure of immense age and sophistication, built by a civilization far beyond human comprehension. He was not alone. A figure emerged from the shadows, its form humanoid but subtly alien. It was tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like polished silver. Its eyes were large and luminous, glowing with an inner light. The figure regarded Eris with a detached curiosity, its expression unreadable. It raised a hand, its fingers long and delicate. "Greetings, human," it said, its voice a melodic whisper that echoed through the chamber. "Welcome to Xylos." Shadows of the past. The unsettling dawn spectacle faded, the pulsing blue energy retreating like a tide leaving behind a strange calm. Dean, still reeling from the sensory overload and Lyra's mind-bending presence, tried to regain his footing, both literally and figuratively. He needed to understand this place, this woman, and how he was going to get off this bizarre island. "Okay," he said, breaking the silence that had descended. "Barriers down, relatively speaking. What now?" Lyra, who had been observing him with an unnerving intensity, finally spoke. Her voice, though still telepathic, seemed warmer now, tinged with something akin to amusement. "Now, Dean Kane, you adapt. Or you perish." The choice, as always, is yours. He glared at her. Real helpful. Maybe a little less cryptic pronouncements and a little more actionable information. She chuckled, a sound that resonated directly in his mind, bypassing his ears. Patience, primitive. All in good time. First, sustenance. Your energy bars are woefully inadequate. This island provides, as I mentioned. Follow. Lyra moved with fluid grace deeper into the cave, her iridescent suit shimmering in the dim light. Dean, ever the skeptical archaeologist, followed, his machete still strapped to his leg, just in case. The cave system was more extensive than he initially realized, a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers, some naturally formed, others clearly carved out by intelligent design. Strange crystalline formations jutted from the walls, emitting a soft, ambient light. They arrived at a chamber dominated by a large, bioluminescent pool. The water glowed with an ethereal blue light and strange, pulsating plants grew along its edges. This is a nutrient reservoir, Lyra explained. The water is rich in minerals and proteins. It sustains me. Dean cautiously approached the pool, peering into its depths. You drink this? I do. And you will too, if you wish to survive. He hesitated. I don't know, Lyra. Looks kinda alien. She raised an eyebrow. And you are not currently stranded on an alien island with an alien woman? Your standards of normalcy are perplexing. He sighed. She had a point. He cupped his hands and scooped up some of the glowing water, bringing it to his nose. It smelled faintly of ozone and something vaguely floral. Taking a deep breath, he took a tentative sip. The taste was surprising. Not unpleasant, but definitely unlike anything he'd ever tasted before. It was slightly sweet, slightly metallic, with a subtle, lingering aftertaste. Well? Lyra asked, her eyes sparkling. Do you live? Dean swallowed. Yeah, I live. It's interesting. Nutritious, you said? Highly. It contains everything your body needs. You will feel invigorated. He hoped so. He felt more like he'd been electrocuted and then interrogated by a beautiful, telepathic alien. As Dean drank, Lyra examined the contents of his emergency pack. She picked up his satellite phone, turning it over in her hands with a look of bemused curiosity. This device, she said, it is designed to communicate with others of your kind? Yeah, Dean replied. It's supposed to connect to a satellite network. But the barrier fried it. Lyra frowned. The barrier is not designed to destroy, only to prevent access. This is concerning. Concerning how? It suggests the barrier is malfunctioning. Its energy matrix is unstable. This could have unforeseen consequences. Dean didn't like the sound of that. Unforeseen consequences like what? Lyra hesitated, her expression troubled. Like attracting unwanted attention. The barrier is meant to shield this island from detection. If it is failing, we could be discovered, Dean finished for her. By who? Your people. She shook her head. Not my people. They abandoned me long ago. There are others who would be interested in this technology. Others who would not be so benevolent. Benevolent? You mean like the ones who left you stranded here for 27 years? Lyra's eyes flashed, and Dean felt a sharp sting of anger in his mind. He quickly averted his gaze. You presume much, primitive, she said, her voice cold. You know nothing of my people, their motivations, their history. Then enlighten me, Dean challenged. I'm all ears, or, mind. Lyra sighed, her anger dissipating as quickly as it had appeared. She seemed to deflate, her posture losing some of its usual grace. It is a long story, Dean Kane. A story of betrayal, of war, of loss. She paused, her eyes clouding with a distant sadness. My people, the Xyler, were once a great civilization. We possessed technology beyond your wildest imaginings. We explored the stars, we created wonders, we thrived. What happened? Dean asked gently, sensing her pain. We grew complacent. We grew arrogant. We believed ourselves to be invincible. And then, the KRYLL arrived. Dean had never heard of the KRYLL, but the way Lyra spoke their name sent a shiver down his spine. They were a nomadic race, driven by a relentless hunger. They consumed everything in their path, stripping planets bare, leaving only lifeless husks in their wake. They were a plague. And they attacked your world. They did. We fought bravely, but we were no match for their numbers, their ferocity. Our technology, once our greatest strength, became our weakness. They adapted to our weapons, they exploited our defenses. We were overwhelmed. So you fled, Dean guessed. Some of us did. We scattered across the galaxy, seeking refuge, seeking a way to survive. This island, this was one of our last outposts. A research facility, designed to study weapons. Weapons? Dean echoed, his eyebrows raised. I thought you were scientists. We were. But we were also at war. We needed weapons to defend ourselves. This facility was meant to develop a deterrent. Something that could stop the KRYLL. And did it work? Lyra shook her head. It was never completed. The KRYLL found us. We were forced to abandon the facility, leaving behind everything. Including you, Dean finished. Including me, she confirmed, her voice barely a whisper. Dean felt a surge of sympathy for her, a deep, visceral connection to this alien woman who had been stranded on this desolate island for nearly 3 decades. He still didn't fully trust her, but he couldn't deny her pain, her loneliness. So, what was this weapon supposed to do? He asked, changing the subject. Lyra hesitated. It was a disruptor. It could unravel the fabric of space-time. Dean stared at her, his mind struggling to comprehend the implications of her words. You're talking about destroying reality? In a localized area, yes. It was a desperate measure, designed to create a barrier that the KRYLL could not penetrate. And this island, it's powered by this weapon? It is. The barrier is a byproduct of the weapon's energy matrix. It is what protects this island, and what keeps me prisoner. Dean paced the chamber, his mind racing. This was far bigger than he had ever imagined. He wasn't just stranded on a mysterious island with a beautiful alien woman. He was trapped on a potential weapon of mass destruction, one that could unravel the very fabric of reality. Okay, he said, stopping in front of Lyra. We need to figure out how to fix the barrier. If it's malfunctioning, it could attract the KRYLL, or whoever else is out there. And we need to find a way to get off this island. Lyra looked at him, her green eyes filled with a mixture of hope and skepticism. You believe you can help me? I don't know, Dean admitted. But I'm willing to try. I'm an archaeologist, not a physicist, but I'm not afraid of a challenge. And besides, I don't really have a choice, do I? Lyra smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face and banished the shadows from her eyes. No, Dean Kane, you do not. But perhaps this is not such a bad thing. Perhaps this is the beginning of something new. She stood up, her eyes gleaming with determination. Come. I will show you the heart of the facility. I will show you the weapon. Dean followed her deeper into the cave, his machete still at his side, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. He had no idea what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for sure, his life would never be the same again. The shifting sands of trust. The spectacle of the dawn barrier receded, leaving behind a charged silence. Dean, still processing the raw power he had witnessed, felt a strange mix of awe and apprehension. He was trapped on an island that was both a paradise and a prison, with an alien woman who was both alluring and enigmatic. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. "Okay," he said, turning to Lyra. "That was impressive. But I still don't understand what's going on. What is this barrier, really? And what does it protect?" Lyra led him deeper into the cave system, her movements fluid and graceful. The walls glowed with an internal light, illuminating intricate carvings that seemed to shift and change as they moved. "The barrier is a complex energy field," she explained, her voice echoing in his mind. "It is generated by the device at the heart of this facility, a weapon, of sorts. It serves two purposes, to shield the island from detection and to contain the weapon itself." "A weapon that can unravel space-time," Dean said, remembering her earlier explanation. "That's a bit concerning." "Indeed," Lyra replied. "It is a power that should not be wielded lightly. My people created it as a last resort, a deterrent against the KRYLL. But it was never meant to be used." "But it is being used," Dean pointed out. "To power this barrier. And you said it's malfunctioning?" Lyra stopped in front of a large, circular chamber. The air hummed with energy, and strange devices pulsed with light. This was clearly the heart of the facility. "The barrier's energy matrix is unstable," she confirmed. "It fluctuates, weakens. It is only a matter of time before it collapses entirely." "And when that happens?" Dean asked. "The island will be exposed. To the KRYLL, or to anyone else who might be searching for this technology." "Great," Dean muttered. "So, we're on a ticking clock." "Precisely," Lyra said. "We must find a way to stabilize the barrier, or we risk attracting unwanted attention." "Okay, so how do we fix it?" Dean asked. "I'm guessing it's not as simple as flipping a switch." Lyra gave him a wry smile. "No, it is not. The device is incredibly complex, far beyond your understanding. But perhaps we can work together." "What do you need me to do?" "I need your help to access the central control system," Lyra explained. "It is protected by a series of security protocols that require a human touch." "A human touch? What does that mean?" "The Xyler, my people, studied humans extensively. They believed that your minds possessed a certain resilience, a certain adaptability that they lacked. They incorporated this into their security systems. To bypass the protocols, you must use your mind to solve a series of puzzles." "Puzzles?" Dean repeated, skeptical. "You're telling me the fate of the world depends on my ability to solve a Rubik's Cube?" "Not exactly," Lyra said, her eyes twinkling. "But close. The puzzles are designed to test your logic, your creativity, your intuition. Qualities that humans possess in abundance. And if I fail? Then we are doomed," Lyra said simply. "The barrier will collapse, and the KRYLL will come. Or someone else. Someone equally dangerous." Dean swallowed, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He was just an archaeologist, not a hero. But he was also a survivor. And he wasn't about to give up without a fight. "Okay," he said, squaring his shoulders. "Let's do it. Show me these puzzles." Lyra led him to a console in the center of the chamber. The console was covered in strange symbols and glowing lights. "This is the interface," she said. "To activate the puzzles, you must place your hand on the sensor." Dean hesitated. "What happens if I touch it?" "You will be linked to the system," Lyra explained. "You will experience the puzzles directly, in your mind. It may be disorienting." "Disorienting how?" "You may experience hallucinations. Illusions. Memories that are not your own." "Sounds fun," Dean said dryly. It is not meant to be enjoyable, Lyra said. It is meant to test you. To break you, if necessary. Dean took a deep breath and placed his hand on the sensor. A jolt of energy surged through his body. The chamber dissolved around him, replaced by a swirling vortex of colors and sounds. He felt like he was falling, tumbling through time and space. Then, suddenly, he was standing in a different place. A place that was both familiar and alien. He was in a library. But not like any library he had ever seen. The shelves stretched to the ceiling, filled with books of all shapes and sizes. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and something else, something metallic. A voice echoed in his mind. Welcome, human. You have entered the labyrinth of the mind. To proceed, you must answer my riddles. Dean looked around, trying to find the source of the voice. Who's there? He called out. I am the guardian of the gate. To pass, you must prove your worth. Okay, I'm listening, Dean said. First riddle, I have cities, but no houses, forests, but no trees, and water, but no fish. What am I? Dean frowned, thinking hard. The riddle was familiar, yet different. A map, he said finally. Correct. Second riddle, what has an eye, but cannot see? Dean thought for a moment. A needle. Correct. Third and final riddle, what is always in front of you but can't be seen? Dean hesitated. This one was trickier. The future, he said at last. Correct. You have proven your worth. You may pass. The library dissolved around him, replaced by another scene. This time, he was in a maze. The walls were high and made of solid stone. He could hear the sound of wind whistling through the corridors. To proceed, you must find the center of the maze, a voice echoed in his mind. But beware, the maze is ever-changing. The path you see may not be the path you find. Dean took a step forward, then another. The maze was disorienting, confusing. He turned left, then right, then left again. He felt like he was going in circles. He stumbled upon a dead end. Frustrated, he kicked the wall. To his surprise, the wall crumbled, revealing a hidden passage. He smiled. Maybe this wouldn't be so hard after all. He ventured into the passage, his heart pounding with anticipation. He had a feeling he was getting closer. But as he rounded a corner, he froze. Standing in front of him was a figure. A tall, slender figure, cloaked in shadows. The figure raised its head, and Dean gasped. It was Lyra. But not the Lyra he knew. This Lyra was different. Her eyes glowed with an eerie light, and her face was twisted into a cruel smile. Hello, Dean, she said, her voice dripping with malice. Welcome to my domain. Dean stumbled backwards, his mind reeling. What was going on? Was this another test? Or was this the real Lyra, the one she had been hiding all along? Who are you? He stammered. What do you want? Lyra laughed, a cold, chilling sound. I want what you have, Dean. Your mind. Your body. Your very essence. She took a step forward, her eyes burning into his soul. And I will have it, she said. One way or another. Whispers in the machine. The spectacle of the dawn barrier subsided, leaving behind a faint residue of energy in the air. Dean felt a strange mixture of exhilaration and unease. The raw power he had witnessed was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. He knew he was in way over his head, but he couldn't deny the thrill of the unknown. And then there was Lyra. So, Dean said, breaking the silence. That was intense. Is it like that every morning? Lyra nodded, her expression serious. Every cycle. The barrier realigns, strengthens. It is a necessary process, but also a dangerous one. Dangerous how? If the energy matrix is unstable, the barrier could overload. It could expand. Engulf the island. Or worse. Worse? Dean echoed, his eyebrows raised. It could attract unwanted attention, Lyra said, her voice low. There are forces out there that would be very interested in this technology. Forces that would not hesitate to use it for their own purposes. Like the KRWLL? Dean asked, remembering her earlier story. Lyra's eyes darkened. The KRYLL are but one threat. There are others, far more subtle, far more insidious. They lurk in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Dean didn't like the sound of that. Okay, so we need to fix the barrier. We need to stabilize the energy matrix. How do we do that? Lyra led him deeper into the cave system, her movements fluid and graceful. The walls glowed with an internal light, illuminating intricate carvings that seemed to shift and change as they moved. The key lies in the central control system, she explained. It is the nexus point of the entire facility. If we can access it, we can recalibrate the barrier, stabilize the energy matrix. And how do we access it? Dean asked. I'm guessing it's not as simple as walking up and typing in a password. No, Lyra said, a faint smile playing on her lips. It is far more complex than that. The control system is protected by a series of security protocols that are designed to test the mind. To challenge the spirit. Sounds pleasant, Dean said dryly. It is not meant to be pleasant, Lyra said. It is meant to be effective. The Xyler, my people, believe that the greatest threats came not from without, but from within. They designed their security systems to guard against betrayal, against corruption, against the weaknesses of the human heart. So, what kind of security protocols are we talking about? Dean asked. Laser grids? Force fields? Mind-reading robots? Something like that, Lyra said, her eyes twinkling. The control system is guarded by a series of mental puzzles. To bypass them, you must enter a state of deep concentration, a state of flow. You must let go of your doubts, your fears, your inhibitions. You must become one with the machine. Become one with the machine. Dean repeated, skeptical. You're asking me to become a cyborg? Not exactly, Lyra said. But close. You must allow the machine to guide you, to teach you. You must trust it implicitly. Trust a machine that was designed by aliens to protect a weapon of mass destruction? Dean asked. Forgive me if I'm a little hesitant. I understand your reservations, Lyra said. But we have no choice. If we want to survive, we must take this risk. Dean sighed. He knew she was right. They were trapped on this island, with no way to contact the outside world. Their only hope was to work together, to trust each other, to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Okay, he said, squaring his shoulders. Let's do it. Show me this control system. Lyra led him to a large, circular chamber in the heart of the cave system. The chamber was filled with strange devices, humming with energy. In the center of the chamber was a large, crystalline structure that pulsed with light. This is the control nexus, Lyra said, her voice reverent. It is the brain of the entire facility. To access it, you must place your hands on the crystal. Dean hesitated. He could feel the energy emanating from the crystal, a palpable force that both attracted and repelled him. What happens when I touch it? He asked. You will be linked to the system, Lyra explained. You will enter a state of deep immersion. You will experience the puzzles directly, in your mind. It may be disorienting. Disorienting how? You may experience hallucinations. Illusions. Memories that are not your own. Sounds safe, Dean said dryly. It is not meant to be safe, Lyra said. It is meant to be challenging. The puzzles are designed to test your limits, to push you to the brink of madness. Only those who are strong enough, resilient enough, will succeed. Dean took a deep breath and placed his hands on the crystal. A jolt of energy surged through his body, throwing him backwards. The chamber dissolved around him, replaced by a swirling vortex of colors and sounds. He felt like he was being pulled apart, his atoms scattered to the four winds. Then, suddenly, he was standing in a different place. A place that was both familiar and alien. He was in a garden. But not like any garden he had ever seen. The plants were strange and exotic, their leaves shimmering with iridescent colors. The air was thick with the scent of unknown blossoms. A voice echoed in his mind. "Welcome, traveler. You have entered the garden of the mind. To proceed, you must solve my riddles." Dean looked around, trying to find the source of the voice. "Who's there?" he called out. "I am the guardian of the garden. To pass, you must prove your wisdom." "Okay, I'm listening," Dean said. "First riddle, I am always hungry, I must always be fed, the finger I touch, will soon turn red. What am I?" Dean frowned, thinking hard. The riddle was simple, yet, elusive. "Fire," he said finally. "Correct." Second riddle, what is full of holes but still holds water? Dean thought for a moment. "A sponge." Correct. Third and final riddle, what question can you never answer yes to? Dean hesitated. This one was trickier. "Are you asleep?" he said at last. Correct. "You have proven your wisdom. You may pass." The garden dissolved around him, replaced by another scene. This time, he was in a desert. The sand stretched as far as the eye could see, shimmering under the harsh sun. "To proceed, you must cross the desert," a voice echoed in his mind. "But beware, the desert is filled with mirages. The path you see may not be the path you find." Dean took a step forward, then another. The sand was hot beneath his feet, and the sun beat down mercilessly on his head. He felt his throat growing dry, his energy waning. In the distance, he saw an oasis. A shimmering pool of water surrounded by palm trees. He quickened his pace, desperate for relief. But as he drew closer, he realized that it was a mirage. The water disappeared, the trees turned to dust. He stumbled forward, his hope fading. Just when he thought he couldn't go on, he saw something else in the distance. A figure. A tall, slender figure, cloaked in white. He squinted, trying to make out who it was. As the figure drew closer, he gasped. It was Lyra. But not the Lyra he knew. This Lyra was different. Her eyes were cold and distant, her face expressionless. "Hello, Dean," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "You have come far. But your journey ends here." Dean stumbled backwards, his mind reeling. What was going on? Was this another test? Or was this the real Lyra, the one she had been hiding all along? "What do you want?" he stammered. Lyra raised her hand, and a bolt of energy shot forth, striking Dean in the chest. He cried out in pain, his body convulsing. He fell to the ground, the sand stinging his face. As darkness closed in around him, he heard Lyra's voice echoing in his mind. "You were a fool to trust me, Dean Cain. I never cared about you. All I wanted was to use you." Then, everything went black. The echo of betrayal. The chilling pronouncement hung in the air, thick and heavy like the pre-storm humidity of the island. Dean stared at the illusory Lyra, his mind struggling to reconcile the seductive, intriguing woman he had come to know with this malevolent apparition. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing to me?" The illusory Lyra smiled, a cruel, predatory expression that sent a shiver down his spine. "I am showing you the truth, Dean Cain. The truth about yourself, and the truth about me." That's not the Lyra I know, Dean protested, clinging to the hope that this was just another test, another illusion. Is it not? The illusory Lyra countered. Or is it simply the Lyra you want to know? The Lyra you have projected your own desires and fantasies onto? Her words stung, hitting a nerve that Dean hadn't even realized was exposed. He had been drawn to Lyra, yes, but he had also been wary of her, suspicious of her motives. Had he been blinded by his own attraction, his own loneliness? You're trying to confuse me, he said, trying to regain his composure. To break me down. Perhaps, the illusory Lyra said. Or perhaps I am simply helping you to see what you have been too afraid to see on your own. You are a scientist, Dean Kane. You pride yourself on your logic, your objectivity. But you are also a human being, driven by emotions, by desires, by weaknesses. And what are my weaknesses? Dean challenged. According to you. Your curiosity, the illusory Lyra said, her eyes gleaming. Your thirst for knowledge. Your need to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. And your attraction to me. She stepped closer, her hand reaching out to caress his cheek. Dean flinched away, repulsed by her touch. Don't, he said, his voice trembling. Why not? The illusory Lyra purred. Are you afraid of what you might discover? Afraid of the power I hold over you? You don't have any power over me, Dean retorted, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Don't I? The illusory Lyra said, her smile widening. I can read your mind, Dean. I know your deepest fears, your darkest secrets. I know what you desire, what you crave. And I can give it to you. She leaned in close, her lips brushing against his ear. I can give you knowledge beyond your wildest dreams. I can give you power beyond your imagining. All you have to do is, surrender. Dean closed his eyes, fighting against the seductive pull of her words. He knew that this was a trap, that surrendering to her would be a mistake. But the temptation was almost unbearable. No, he said, his voice barely audible. I won't. The illusory Lyra laughed, a cold, mocking sound that echoed through the maze. You are stronger than I thought, Dean Kane. But your strength will not last. Eventually, you will break. Everyone does. She stepped back, her form shimmering and distorting. But perhaps I am wasting my time. Perhaps there is a quicker way to achieve my goals. She raised her hand, and a surge of energy shot forth, striking Dean in the chest. He cried out in pain, his body convulsing. He fell to the ground, the stone cold against his face. As darkness closed in around him, he heard the illusory Lyra's voice echoing in his mind. You were a fool to trust me, Dean Kane. I never cared about you. All I wanted was to use you. Then, everything went black. Dean gasped, his eyes snapping open. He was back in the chamber, his hands still pressed against the crystalline structure. Lyra was standing in front of him, her expression etched with concern. Dean, she exclaimed. What happened? You collapsed. Dean pulled his hands away from the crystal, his body trembling. He felt disoriented, confused. He wasn't sure what was real and what was an illusion. I don't know, he stammered. I saw things. Terrible things. The security protocols, Lyra said, her voice grim. They are designed to break you down, to test your resolve. Did you see me? Dean hesitated. He didn't want to tell her about the illusory Lyra, about the things she had said. He was afraid of what it might reveal about her, about himself. I saw a version of you, he said finally. A dark version. Lyra nodded, her expression somber. That is not surprising. The protocols often use your own fears and doubts against you. They create illusions, distortions of reality. They try to convince you that you cannot trust anyone, not even yourself. And can I trust you? Dean asked, his voice filled with doubt. Lyra looked at him, her green eyes filled with sincerity. I know it is difficult to trust me, Dean. I have given you little reason to do so. But I swear to you, I am on your side. I want to fix the barrier, to escape this island. And I need your help to do it. Dean studied her face, trying to discern the truth in her words. He still wasn't sure if he could trust her completely, but he knew that he didn't have any other choice. Okay, he said, his voice firm. I'll trust you. But you need to be honest with me. No more secrets. No more illusions. Lyra nodded. I promise, she said. Now, come. We must continue. We cannot afford to waste any more time. She led him back to the console, her hand gently guiding him. Dean felt a flicker of warmth at her touch, a reminder of the connection they had forged, despite the obstacles and the deceptions. We must try again, Lyra said. But this time, we will approach it differently. This time, I will guide you. I will help you to resist the illusions, to overcome the challenges. Dean looked at her, his heart filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. He knew that the challenges ahead would be even greater than the ones he had already faced. But he also knew that he wasn't alone. He had Lyra, and he had his own strength, his own determination. Together, they would face the darkness, and together, they would find a way to survive. Okay, Dean said, his voice filled with resolve. Let's do it. He took a deep breath and placed his hands back on the crystal, ready to face whatever horrors awaited him in the depths of his own mind. This time, he wouldn't let the illusions break him. This time, he would fight back. This time, he would win.